Hey, mathematicians, how's it going? Today we're going to be starting lesson 8.2. 8.2 is separated into two parts. This is part A, which is about arcs and central angles. So let's start with our objective. I can find the measure of central angles and their corresponding arcs. So before we go into how to measure them, some things to remember from our last lesson. There are three things. A central angle has its vertex on the center of the circle. A central angle has the same measure as its corresponding arc, and all arcs slash central angles of a circle add up to 360 degrees. So I have this central angle here. We have angle TAV. And I know that it's a central angle because its vertex is on the central point of the circle, point A. Now we also know that the measure of central angle TAV is equal to the measure of arc TV. In other words, this piece right here. So if this angle measured 70 degrees, for example, then the arc would also measure 70 degrees. And like we said, all of the arcs added together, their measure is 360 degrees. And that's the same for the central angles. All of the central angles together add up to 360 degrees. So let's continue on with some examples. So here's our circle. And first we need to look at the things that are given to us. So the first thing I see is that I'm given this angle, which is 53 degrees, and that is angle FMG. The other thing I'm given is the 90-degree angle here, which is JMH. So angle JMH and FMG are given to me. Now let's identify what we're looking for. So we're looking for four things: the measure of arc FG, the measure of angle JMK, the measure of arc FJG, and the measure of arc GH. So why don't we start with the first one, the measure of arc FG. And I want to identify where this arc is at first. So let's highlight this in red, and I'm going to find the arc FG here. Now I see point F and I see point G, so that must be my arc there. But just to verify, remember that a minor arc only has two letters in the name and a major arc has three. Since this is a minor arc, I know it's going to be less than half the way around the circle, which is what this piece is. So this must be minor arc FG. Now, if we remember what we were talking about earlier, we said that the measure of a central angle is the same as the measure of its corresponding arc. So because angle FMG is 53 degrees, then arc FG must also be 53 degrees, since the endpoints of the arc are the same as the endpoints of the segment that make up the angle F and G. Therefore, the measure of arc FG is 53 degrees. Let's move on to the next one, angle JMK, and I'm going to highlight this in green. So let's go find these points and highlight them. So here's point J, here's point M, and here's point K. And I know that it's going to be an angle, so I'm going to highlight the angle here. So we're looking for this angle here. Now, there's nothing obvious here, like in the previous one, that tells me what the measure of this angle should be. But if we remember angle relationships, we remember talking about several different relationships we can have with angles form of two lines that cross each other. And we call these vertical angles because the angles directly across from each other are congruent. Anytime you have two lines that intersect, the angles directly across from each other are congruent. And that's what's happening here, because I have this line and I have this line that intersect. So the angles directly across from each other are congruent. So if this angle is 53 degrees, then by vertical angles, this will also be 53 degrees. So the measure of angle JMK is 53 degrees because of vertical angles. Cool. So let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to do this one in purple. So the measure of arc FJG. Now, since we have 3 letters, that's going to be a major arc. So I know it's going to be more than halfway around the circle. It's going to be greater than 180 degrees. So I need to find the path that these 3 points are telling me to take. So I'm going to start from point F, go to point J, and finish at point G. So let's find those on the circle. Here I have point F, here I have point J, and over here is point G. So that means that I'm going this way, starting from point F through point J and finishing at point G. So there's my major arc. Now I need to find its measure. There's 2 ways that you can find the measure of a major arc like this. One way is to take the measure of the central angles that form that arc, or the measures of that same arc, all the pieces, and add them together. So the measure of this angle plus the measure of this angle plus the measure of this angle plus the measure of this angle, or the measure of this arc plus this arc plus this arc plus this arc. But the problem with that is that I don't know some of these arcs. I don't know what this one is. I don't know what this one is either. So I can't use that method. My other option is, because since this arc FJG plus FG form the full circle, that's 360 degrees. So if I subtract arc FG from my total arc measure, 360 degrees, then I'll find the measure of arc FJG. So let's do that. I have 360. Now I'm going to subtract the 53 degrees from arc FG. And here I get 307. So the measure of arc FJG is 307 degrees. Finally, I need to find the measure of arc GH. So let's highlight that one in pink. And so if I look for GH, I know it's a minor arc. G and H are right there, so my arc is here. So now to find the measure of arc GH, again, I can find the measure of the central angle, and that'll give me the measure of the arc here. So the question is, how do I find that? Well, if I look carefully, I know that since I have a 90-degree angle here, and because this is a straight line here, if this angle is 90 degrees, then these 2 angles must add up to be 90 degrees as well, because those 2 angles together will form a right angle. So I need to find out what number plus 53 will give me 90. Now, I might have some trouble figuring that out, so let's work backwards. If I know these 2 add up to 90 degrees, I can take away 53 and be left with the missing angle. So we have 90 minus 53. And here we get 7, and we get 3. So the measure of arc GH is 37 degrees. Not bad, right? Let's move on to the next example. Now this time, there are equations involved. We have some expressions here with x, so it's going to be a little bit tougher, but we can get it. First, we need to find out the value of x. It says x equals, and I need to find out what x is. So let's take a look at what we have in our circle. We have the measure of arc NP as 9x plus 42 degrees. We have the measure of arc NQ as 4x plus 72. And we have this angle that is 90 degrees, which means that this arc is also 90 degrees. So in order to find x here, we need to remember that the sum of all arcs on a circle is equal to 360 degrees. So that means I'm going to add up all of the arcs that I have and it's going to add up to 360 degrees. So let's start with 90. And I have the next arc, which is 9x plus 42. And let me do that in green. Plus 9x plus 42. And I have the next arc, which is 4x plus 72. Plus 4x plus 72. At this point, now I need to reduce this equation, combine like terms, and then solve for x. So I'm going to start by combining my like terms. I'm going to start with the constants, and I'll draw a square around those. There's a constant, there's a constant, and there's a constant. And then I'm going to circle my variables, anything with an x in it. So there I have the 9x, and there I have the 4x. Now I'm going to combine these. So I have 90 plus 42 plus 72. And that gives me 4 here. And that's 9 plus 7, 16, plus 4 is 20. So I get 204. And then if I add my variables, I have 9 and 4. And so that gives me 13. So I end up with 360 equals 13x plus 204. And so now I need to draw my line through the equal sign because I know I'm going to solve this equation. So when I have my equation, since all of my constants are on this side I still have variables and constants. So I'm going to make the constants move over to the other side by canceling them out. And to do that, I do the opposite. Instead of plus, I do minus. And I have to do that on both sides so that my equation stays equal. So 360 minus 204, that gives me 6. That gives me 5. And here's 100. So I get 156 equals 13x. Now, since this is 13 times x, to cancel out times, I'm going to divide. So I divide both sides by 13. Now, I don't know what 156 divided by 13 is off the top of my head. So let's divide it out in the calculator. So 156 divided by 13 gives me 12. So I end up with 12. And on this side, 13's cancel out, and I'm left with x. So x equals 12. Now that I know what x is, I can find the rest of these. So we have the measure of angle NSP. So again, let's go and highlight that so I know where that is. So I have N to S to P, and this is an angle. So I highlight this. Now, I don't know what the measure of the angle is, but I know the measure of its corresponding arc. So if I know what the arc measures, then I'll know what the angle measures. And since I know that the arc is 9x plus 42, now that I know what x is, I can plug that in. So I substitute 12 for x, and let's calculate that in the calculator. So 9 times 12 plus 42 gives me 150. So the measure of angle NSP is 150 degrees. Now we need to find the measure of arc NQ. So again, I'm going to start from N. I'm going to go to Q. It's a minor arc. There's only 2 letters, so I'm not going this way around. I'm only going this way. I messed up. I'm going this way. Now again, I don't know what the measure of the angle is, but I know the measure of the arc is 4x plus 72. So I have 4, let me do that in blue, 4x plus 72. Since I know that x is 12, I'm going to substitute that in. And let's plug that in the calculator. 4 times 12 plus 72. And we end up with 120. And that's the measure for NQ. The last one is asking us for the measure of arc NPQ. So now we know that this is going to be a major arc. So let's go and highlight that, and let's find out what its measure is. So I'm going to start with N, and I need to go to P, then to Q. So I go to N, P is over here, Q is over here, so I'm going this way. Now, just like the last problem, there's two ways that I can do this. I can add this arc and this arc together to get that measure, or I can subtract this blue arc from 360 to get that measure. I think I'm going to add here, and it could go either way, so it doesn't matter. Either one will get you the right answer. So I need to know the measure of arc NP though. Now I know the measure of angle NSP is 150, so I know that arc NP is also 150. Then I also know that arc PQ is 90 degrees, so I add 150 plus 90, and that gives me 240 degrees. And that's it. So that's all that this video has. If you haven't checked out the second part of this lesson, where we talk about congruent chords, make sure you check that out. The link will be in the description. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.